Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. This is my second take on my continuing effort to make mathematics, normal. If I can employ that language, try and normalize it, because really the biggest thing with mathematics is, and the reason why human civilizations learn mathematics is the power that it holds to propel economies to the highest level of growth, to advancement, to creating technical jobs, to providing solutions to the problems we have in our lives, in our countries, as economies, as human beings, and as a civilization. So it's very important that people do not lose sight of the fact that learning mathematics is important, because it's for our own survival. It's how we relate with the world around us. Not learning mathematics, it means we're making choices that are actually detrimental to us as a people or as a country. It is important to keep digging in and trying to encourage parents, to encourage students, to encourage every guardian, everyone, to actually try their best to learn mathematics, because it is something that we can do. I know there are many messages that tell us otherwise, and those are firm and they are strong and they persist, and they've been with us for a long time. But they only constitute strong societal myths about what maths is and who can learn mathematics. So I would like to, as I start this video again, just emphasize that if you are interested in learning more about the spot, like the sweet spot, if I call it, between language, statistics, and mathematics or algebra. These are ideas that I've picked up, and I've learned them from a mathematician. Her name is Tai Dene Bradley. She's a black woman. She just obtained a PhD, I think, during the pandemic. And she initially, when she was young, like most obviously people who tend to succeed in the fields that they choose to be in, she never thought of herself, or she could never envision herself as a mathematician. She says in one of her talks, it took a particular teacher, I think post-high school, who, when she was learning calculus, she's an American, she was learning calculus 1 or 2 or 3, I can't remember which one it is. But then this teacher of hers, all of a sudden said to the class, you do not need to be intelligent, or you do not need to be smart or super brilliant to learn maths. She says this took her back, because she'd always believed throughout high school that you needed to be smart to learn maths. And here this professor who said you don't need any of that. You just need to persevere. You just need to be interested. You need to put down the work. You just need to believe yourself. And obviously you need a good teacher. And you must be a good student too. And then that kind of like changed the thing for her, because she never thought of it like that. And obviously this teacher was quite influential and a very good teacher. She explained concepts in mathematics in a way she had never heard them explained, that made sense to her all of a sudden. Because she says before that, she just used to memorize maths just to pass tests and do well and get good grades. And now she works she's doing her PhD. Like I said, the title of her PhD paper is The Interface Between Algebra and Statistics. So that's where she explores the ideas of language, algebra. And in fact, as it turns out, she actually works for a research company that I think is a parent company to Google, and they are working in the space of AI, artificial intelligence. So if you don't want to learn mathematics, computers are going to do things for you. They'll continue to do so, and that includes speaking the language on your behalf. Can you imagine that? I can't fathom it myself, because Google is spending money doing research for AI so that AI gets better, and they are employing PhD mathematicians to do it. So now with the idea of mathematics and why we need to learn and learn it well, and I was saying in my previous video, I'm trying to map connections between how we learn maths, how I help the students that I help to learn mathematics and learn it effectively and learn it better. But I'm also trying to draw connections to the usefulness of that in the workplace, and via using a growth mindset perspective. When we learn mathematics, we learn that the research that is used, that is backing the discipline that I participate in at the moment, is empirical research that was done in psychology, maths education, as well as neuroscience. And from neuroscience, we learn that our brains have got neural connections. We know that obviously the anatomy of the brain, and in fact the physiology of human beings, it means that it's made up of neural networks. We've got things that are called synapses. These are nerve cells. They transport information from throughout the body. They do this by way of electrical impulses, and they pass information between them. Turns out, obviously, also our brains are made up of billions and billions and billions of neural structures, neural connections. And this is what allows us to process and learn information. This is what allows us to use our brains the ways we do. This is actually the idea behind that, to have the myth or the lie, unfortunate lie, that society has told its kids and various generations of human beings that you need to be intelligent to learn maths. It is myth, it is mythical, because our brains have got similar neural structures, neural connections. It is these neural connections that allow us to learn and learn deeply. So when we learn maths, and when we say, for example, make a mistake in mathematics, just as we make mistakes in general, in ordinary life, when you make a mistake in mathematics, your neural connections, they fire up. They fire. It's like an ignition. They fire. Whether you are aware of the mistake or you're not. This translates to teachers or anyone who's a guardian, parents and managers in education, to actually recognize that the way the brain works is such that it is receptive to new knowledge, to new information, including mistakes, including not knowing. It encourages us to learn from mistakes, because through mistakes we learn the best. And research, neuroscience research tells us we should actually encourage kids or anyone who learns mathematics to go forth and make those mistakes, because those mistakes are beneficial for the brain growth. Those mistakes should not be frowned upon. So your classroom, if you're a teacher with kids, you should allow mistakes, because mistakes allow your kids to thrive. They remove the need for anxiety, for fear of mathematics. It is through making mistakes that we learn deeply and learn deeper mathematical concepts, because when you sanction mistakes, students withdraw from learning, because they are fearful of making a mistake. They are fearful of being judged. So censoring mistakes in the classroom is actually harmful to learning. We know this as well, that mistakes in the corporate flow, in the workspace, mistakes are frowned upon, and people are discouraged from making mistakes because it's associated with costs. But here's the thing. If we can learn maths via mistakes, via making mistakes, and learn it deeply, just imagine what would happen if you allowed and you set your staff free to make mistakes. They get more innovative, they get more creative, they lose the fear of being sanctioned, they lose the fear of self-censoring themselves or self-sanctioning. They get bold, and people get innovative, get creative, because practice in creativity leads to results, leads to innovation, leads to new products, leads to new insights, leads to new ideas, leads to fresh ideas, leads to new connections being made, because that's how our brains are made up. They're made of neural connections and neural networks. So it's quite important as employees or as managers, business leaders, to recognize that mistakes are beneficial. Mistakes, a staff that is free to think and think openly and wildly, they are those staff members who are treated in that kind of a corporate culture or an office culture tend to be more productive than a staff that is fearful of making mistakes, of breaking things, walking around in the office. For example, as I said, I'm tossing between the two worlds of learning and teaching mathematics and deriving insights from there back into the space of corporate life. When we think, for example, how we learn structure in algebra, and this is obviously a metaphor for life as well, we can ask the question: does the algebraic framework allow us to zoom in to individual pieces of a certain structure of information, to zoom into the individual pieces to allow us to understand the whole? What is that structure? What is the totality, the total sum of the structure is made of? Like I said earlier on, does using algebra or mathematical thinking allow us, when we're observing and looking at a group of objects that put together, does algebra or mathematical thinking allow us to zoom into the individual elements of that mathematical structure? And the answer, of course, is yes, because think for example, when a surgeon is performing or investigating, say, for example, a brain tumor, what instruments do they use? They use an MRI scan in your brain or any part of your body. So the MRI scan, by definition, basically